Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to our Chicago Blackhawks franchise mode here in NHL 23. So in last episode, we simulated a little bit more of the season, and as you can see so far, this team is on a historically bad pace. Probably not going to even hit 15 wins this season, as we are 8-45-10 just before the trade deadline, which is pretty insane. So it doesn't look like we're going to be a playoff team for sure. And I was asking you guys about potential making some moves and stuff like that, but it seems like nobody actually wants me to make any trades. But I will still get into those comments that suggest that. I think the only thing we're going to be really doing in this portion of the season is making a coaching change, because we brought in a bad coach just to make this team kind of bad, and now I feel like it's kind of affecting our team in a bad sense, because people like, for example, like Byfield dropped down to an 83 because of the morale. Like, there's a couple other guys that were affected by it, like McCabe and Mitchell. So I think a coaching change would be beneficial for this team, obviously, down the road. So we are going to make a coaching change before we actually sim the rest of the season. So before we get into simulating the rest of the season, we do have a couple comments to go over. So the first one is from Rahul B. He says, I think in the off season, a coaching change is needed for the upcoming season. This season was a success for ultimately tanking for the first overall pick, but I'm worried about player development if another season like this would happen. Not to mention that you have Byfield locked up long term in his overall tank due to morale, and he might have statistical minuses next season due to his awful season. I'm sure there will be at least an A overall coach in the offseason, and I think it'll help you out for next season. Keep up the great vids, bro. So he's saying to take a new coach in the offseason. I might already make a coaching change, because there is already actually some good coaches out there for options, like at least for short term we could use, and they would at least be a little bit beneficial to this. As you can see, the locker room chemistry is down to a 29%, which might be my lowest locker room chemistry ever. So I think at least changing the coach should have that number go up a little bit by the end of the season, even if this team loses a bunch of games, which hopefully they don't. The next comment is from Pens Gaming 7. He says, I commented that before the awful start, which is referring to his old comment. He said, what I mean is don't sell and tank. It sucks that you're doing so bad, but don't sell off pieces. Keep the team together as the young guys develop. And then I also just mentioned about the coaching change potentially doing that, and he said, yeah, I should do that. So we are going to be definitely making that coaching change. The next comment is from Mike Garbrandt. He says, just sign a scratch cap whale as a third goalie in the NHL. Trade Byfield for a top 5 pick in this year's draft. He has no X factors. Use the trade finder. I feel like you could find more steals there, especially if you go off the trade they want and make adjustments to it too. Awesome series, just like the Tigers. So Byfield is definitely not part of the trading block, because this team is he's kind of like the centerpiece for this team in a sense, because at least while Pettersson's developing, Byfield is their top line center of the future. We didn't trade for him just to let him go, and we didn't sign him to 8 years just to trade him away. So Byfield is going to be staying with this team, and he's not going to get dealt, because his trade value is probably tanked off as well, just because of how bad of a season everybody on this team has had. But yeah, we're not going to be trading Byfield, because you can see his values drop down by half. Like, this would probably be a lot higher up if he was actually still like an 89 overall. The next 3 comments are from Rebecca Weiss-Woods. The next 2 comments, I mean. The first one says, I would fire the head coach now and try and salvage the team. Usually on July 1st, you could fire coaches without penalties. If you trade players, you'll have to retain 50% on them, since you're going for picks and prospects to keep some salary until the end of the year, unless you sign a cap whale before the trade deadline, which is true. So basically, like, if we were to make trades, we'd have to retain 50%, or we'd have to find somebody to sign as a cap whale, which I don't really feel like doing already. So yeah, we're probably just not going to make any trades for the rest of the season in that sense. And then the other comment from Rebecca says, I wouldn't trade Byfield this year. He's just demoralized. Everyone is having a bad year. For trades, I say don't do anything, because their trade values will be severely bad. That said, I think this team is going to win 12 games this year. So yeah, 12 games this year is not looking too good for this team. I don't even know if we'll hit that. It depends on how good our last month is. Once we get a new coach, maybe we'll start to win a lot more games. But yeah, I don't think we're going to be making any trades, just because, yeah, everybody pretty much on this roster is demoralized with how we've been playing. Obviously, when you're going to only win 8 games and you're in March, then you're definitely going to have a team that is a little bit demoralized. As you can see, like, everybody's like neutral in terms of chemistry. You have a lot of disgruntled guys here on this team right now, and disengaged players. So once the team starts winning, these guys should shoot back up in overall. So we'll experience the lows before we experience the highs, and we have some good guys in the AHL that at least start getting some like growth and stuff like that, which is good, and trending upwards too. So at least some of these guys will be in the NHL next season, and yeah, the team should be good next season, I hope, especially with a new coach and all that type of thing. And then the final and last comment is from HockeyGuy88. He says, you really need to get all the top 5 draft picks scouted, especially Vance and Tikhonov. Yeah, we basically need to make sure we have a scout in the region that Vance was. I don't think we're going to be able to get them fully scouted, so we might actually have to do draft interviews at the end of this episode, just because I don't have a scout for wherever Vance is from. I don't know why Tikhonov hasn't been scouted fully yet. He's currently being scouted, same with Christensen. Mies is being scouted, and Cox is not being scouted. So that means Cox is in what division? USA Central, looks like. Yeah, okay, so yeah, we need USA Central for both Vance and Cox to find out what they are. But I know Mies is medium elite for sure. I'm not sure about Christensen and Tikhonov. They're probably medium elite as well, which means Vance, he could be a franchise player, which would be pretty awesome, but he could be also just a medium elite. So we are going to go to assign scout. I think we don't have 20 out of 20, right? Yeah, we don't have 20 out of 20. So we actually have 2 USA East scouts. But I am going to go to hire scouts, see if there's any really good scouts, which there is not, unfortunately. So we'll move one of our USA East scouts over to USA Central just to get those guys somewhat scouted a bit before we actually do draft interviews, because we will do draft interviews at the end of this episode just to find out a little bit more about those top 5 picks, because we want to make sure we're drafting the right player, especially if we have the first overall pick this year. So there's that, and let's make our coaching change already, because we are going to get rid of this head coach. So we are going to fire this guy, and we are going to promote this guy to our interim head coach, and we're going to promote this guy to our interim associate coach just for now, just to make sure we actually have the coaches. And let's hire ourselves the NHL head coach, which in this case, the one I was looking at, because I was looking at like the scheme fits and stuff like that. The best scheme fit for a coach was a B, wasn't it? Oh yeah, it was this guy, Komisarek. He actually has a 69% scheme fit. As you can see, he's also got good teaching grades, good penalty killing. His offense is not great. His defense is good. Power play and coach influence not really that great, but he will be a good short-term coach, I think, just because he's got the good teaching grade and he also fits well with his team. So we will sign him up as our head coach for the remainder of this year. And then maybe we'll make a change in the offseason. Again, maybe this guy becomes just an assistant coach for our team at some point. But for now, he's going to be our NHL head coach once he actually accepts that. And yeah, that's pretty much that. So let's advance a day and get to the trade deadline. Like I said, we are probably just gonna completely bypass the trade deadline, because I don't think we're going to make any trades. Let's just go as a seller. Yeah, let me enter the trade deadline for fun, but I don't think we're going to be making any trades this year just because of what I was mentioning. Because a lot of these guys that are on the block are players that we don't need, considering we're not competitive at all. Like, it would be nice if we were a competitive team in a sense to get guys like Brock Besser in, but we're not going to be a competitive team. So I don't think there's any use for us to make any trades, especially like you guys are saying, when these players are mostly demoralized. Their values have dropped off a lot as well. Because if we look at our most trade value on our team, it's the younger guys, of course, but then guys like that should have higher trade value, like Fiala, for example, his has dropped down, I think, a little bit. Maybe it's down there because of his salary cap hit, I don't know exactly. But in general, a lot of these guys' values should be a decent amount higher, like Manson, for example, Kubalik. So, yeah, I think this team is just going to stay together for the rest of the season. Okay, sorry about that. I had to sneeze for some reason. So there is that. So we're not going to make any trades this year. We're going to take a look at what AI trades happen now and then simulate the rest of the season. Wrap up this year, and then, like I said, we are going to be doing some draft interviews and stuff like that, getting set up for the draft in next episode. So there was a pretty big trade at the deadline. Apparently, Ryan Pilla gets sent to the Winnipeg Jets for a prospect, a second, a third, and a 6th round pick. Interesting. Also, Tony DeAngelo gets sent to St. Louis. Pittsburgh gets Braden Shen in a second in return. And those are the big trades. Let's take a look at what other AI trades happened, because I don't think I looked at this last year. I could be wrong, but just in case you guys want to see what happened. So, like, Dylan Strome got traded to New Jersey. Adam Larson gets traded to Nashville. Daniel Sprong gets traded to Tampa Bay. D'Angelo to St. Louis, we saw that one. Chris Tanev to Washington. Also, Marcus Johansson goes back to Washington, it looks like. Connor Garland goes to Winnipeg with Justin Braun for Fabian Lysell. Damn, Lysell's been dealt multiple times already. Rickard Rakell to Los Angeles from Pittsburgh. Ottawa gets Sundqvist for Tyler Boucher. What the heck? It's kind of a weird one. And some other guys. Oscar Lindblom going back to the Philadelphia Flyers. That's kind of neat. We already saw the Pollock deal. Grounds for Lowry, basically. And then Ryan Graves goes to Florida. Interesting. So those are the trades this year. Not a whole lot of them. But let's simulate the rest of the season. Get that new head coach in, which should be soon. He declined, apparently. That's interesting. Let's give him a lot more money then, because we need that guy as our head coach for now. Just because this team is really struggling and we don't want them to suffer more morale problems, you know. So we'll go NHL head coach and let's give him more money than that. And he should accept that easily since he's getting paid like an extra $200,000 or something. So we should be able to get him there, which will be good. And hopefully our scouts are scouting the right players. We might have to make do of that if they don't get scouted. Okay, we're still experiencing losses, which is not a surprise since you don't have to coach yet. There we go. Okay, so we got ourselves our new head coach. Let me go back to the coaching staff quickly. And it was Barnett. That should be our associate coach, right? Yeah, I think it was him. So we're going to demote. Yeah, we're going to demote this guy to AHL associate coach, and then this guy is going to be our NHL associate coach. There you go, perfect. So that should be good. We could always use our AHL head coach as an NHL coach at some point too, which would be interesting, but not yet. So there you go on that front, and let's just make sure we are getting that top guy scouted. Let's see, scout player, and we want to know his potential in comparison. That's the most important part, I guess, is the potential in comparison on those guys. God damn it, I didn't want to do that. More than likely, both of them are medium elites, but there is a chance that they're being franchised. Okay, so one of them's already getting scouted, so that's good. And we already know Christensen's a medium elite defensive defenseman, so that's what he looks like, just in case you guys wanted to know. And we already know Misa's medium elite for sure. I'm pretty sure he's a lower overall medium elite though. So it just comes down to what Tikhonov and Vance are. Hopefully Vance is a franchise guy, because that would be really nice to get a franchise player in a franchise mode, because I haven't had a franchise player in a franchise mode in quite a while, I think. Let's simulate the rest of the season and get it done with, see if we win more games. We only won 8 games up to this point, and now with this new head coach, how much wins are we going to get is the question. Are we going to get a lot more or not? Or is the morale of this team going to just give them a bunch of losses down the stretch? Pedersen, I don't think, was injured, right? Oh, he was. Okay. I just must have totally ignored that. So there you go. Pedersen is back. Shootout loss. Hey, that's a point. We have a lot of shootout losses, though, this season. Hey, there's a shootout win. So there's our first win in a while. Probably over 2 months. I don't even remember when the last win this team had. I almost said the Sens had. Okay, so there is that. Game against Minnesota. Pedersen's been injured again. The poor young guy's been injured multiple times already here. And now Korchinski's been injured. Jeez. There's an injury bug going through this team as well, so this team's not even going to be able to play at like full health, which is unfortunate. We only have 9 wins. Are we even going to hit double-digit wins this season? Because at this rate, I don't think we are going to. Pedersen dropped down to an 81, but it might be injury reasons. Who was it that was also back? Oh yeah, Korchinski, that's why. Yeah, this team is looking terrible in terms of the morale. Like Ian Mitchell and Jake McCabe both have dropped off a lot. Come on, boys, just get at least 10 wins this season. Because this is a terrible, terrible year. This might be the worst year this team has ever had. I think the Chicago Blackhawks back in 1928 I saw had a terrible record, but no Chicago team obviously has had that bad of a record since. So get Tepley back in there. That's good. Oh wait, come on, I want to see the rest of this. It's doing that dumb glitch again. Yeah, we're not even going to hit 10 wins this season, are we? Last game of the season against the Oilers, no, we do not. We finished 9-59-14. That is a historically bad season. A very bad season. Where does that finish in terms of all-time worst seasons? Let me look that up while we're actually recording this video. All-time worst NHL seasons. Let's see. Okay, so this terrible season, the lowest amount of wins in a season looks like 4 wins, but it was way less games. It's probably the Washington Capitals one, still from their inaugural season, where they went 8-67-5. So I guess that's the closest. Like, we did even worse in a sense. Actually, not really worse, because the inaugural Ottawa Senators had 10 wins. We had 9 wins this year, but they had 70 regulation losses, while we had 59 regulation losses. So, but yeah, the worst Chicago Blackhawks team ever was 7-34-3. And then there was one that was 12-51-7. So yeah, that compares to that. So let's take a look at our player stats anyways for this season. See who did what. And also see the standings, even though we're nowhere the last team in the NHL. Damn, yeah, we finished way worse than anybody else. 38 points back of the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's quite the margin. So goals for per game, we averaged under 2 goals a game, 1.7. Goals against per game, we were the worst in the league at 3.8, so we allowed 0.5 more goals than anybody else. Our power play was also the worst, 9.4%, and our penalty kill was one of the worst, the second worst in the league, 81%. Detroit was below us. We had 2 shorthanded goals. We only had 4 wins on home ice in 5 on the road. And we did not win a game in our last 10 games of the season with that new coach even, so that's a bit scary. Hopefully we could turn this around in the off season. So Byfield led the centers with 33 points. He was a minus 52, yikes. But his morale at least has gone a little bit back up, because he was an 80-something before. I think it's gone back up, I could be wrong. Gershev, 29 points, minus 40. Pedersen, 25 points, minus 30, 73 games. Lambert, 24 points, minus 26. In general, a lot of minuses on this team, but at least some points from the younger guys, which is what we want. Some of these guys won't be coming back next season, but hopefully this team can turn it around. Jeez. Fiala was a minus 58. Yeah, that top line got shredded. Frank Vetrano led us in points with 33 points this year. Just kind of funny. What a disastrous year for this team. Sam Girard was a minus 73. Jeez. By comparison to his first 2 years here, or first year and a half, that is unreal how bad he was. Goddamn. Yeah, Inga Branson was minus 5 in 10 games. Goalie-wise, I'm surprised Comesso had over a 900 save percentage this year. That's at least good. Hopefully he continues to get some development, but Drieger was pretty terrible. So there is our player stats. Let's go to the entire league for forwards first. See who led the league in points. It's going to be Kucherov with 111, McKinnon right behind him with 100. But those are the only 2 100-point guys this season. Best goal scorer was Kucherov as well by 8 goals. Interesting. Let's take a look at the Selke candidates. Let's actually go by takeaways. And look at the face-off percentage. Got to do what Sin does here. So it looks like Barkov should easily win the Selke this year. And Ryan O'Reilly's also probably up there. So there's that. Most fights this season for fun. Steve Fawcett of the Arizona Coyotes, some generated prospect, 24 fights. The next closest person was Brendan Lee with only 3. So yeah, Fawcett is an interesting player there. He's a two-way forward, but he fights a lot. Best defenseman for points this year, Cale Makar is 77. He's going to easily win the Norris. Best goalie this season for wins, Vasilevsky with 46. Most shutouts, UC Saros and Mackenzie Blackwood with 9. Best save percentage by a starter, Bobrovsky with a 926, but Blackwood also was up there with a 923 and has a much better goals against. So I would assume Blackwood would probably end up winning it, but You also have an argument for Samsonov just because of the less losses and stuff like that, but that goals against is much higher is the only thing. Yeah, I think it might have to be Blackwood that wins the Vezina this year over Bobrovsky, but it's definitely pretty close. Any goalie goals this season? No goalie goals. Most goalie assists, Markstrom, and a bunch of others with 3. Best rookie this year for points, Dominic Bach with only 33 points, so the NHL scoring seems like it was down quite a bit. Markstrom, that might be the guy that you guys were telling me to look at before, right? Yeah, it was. He was in Philadelphia. So he started off with Washington's AHL team, got dealt, and he was in Philly, but we couldn't find him because of the umlauts a bunch above the O, which is interesting. So there's Markstrom. He is looking like a pretty good defenseman there for Philly. 28 points in his rookie season. Brad Lambert was up there for us, which is also kind of interesting that he could have almost won the Calder with that bad of a plus-minus. So there is that. Let's take a quick look at our AHL team as well for points, just because I'm curious on that. And geez, Frank Nazar led the entire league in points. I don't know, that's entire rookie race. Let's go to Rockford though and take a look at our top prospects down there. Let's go by all skaters. So Sini and Kachuk were really good. Nazar was really good. A lot of players were really good down there. Olson's jumped up to an 81. Edvinson's a 79. Some of those guys are just going to get thrown into the NHL regardless next season. So I don't know if Caleb Jones is going to be back in the NHL next season or what. We got to decide on what to do with him. Brunstrom only played that many games and then he got scratched, so we got to throw him back into the lineup at some stage. Soderblom was incredible this season in the AHL. A sub 2 goals against average still. Mikkelsen was really good as the backup as well, so the AHL team was really good defensively. 12 shutouts combined by the 2 goaltenders. Like, when a backup has 3 shutouts, that's pretty unreal. So good stuff from our young prospects down there in Rockford at least, so that's at least something to look forward to for next season. Let's simulate through these playoffs and see who ends up winning the Stanley Cup and the awards. And also then we will do some draft class interviews, take a look at the draft class, the contract situation, and the progress reports to wrap up the season. And hopefully the AHL team could go on to win like a Calder Cup or something down there. That would be nice. But Kachuk was injured right at the end of the season, so that might hurt the team's chances a bit. But who knows? So there you go. Let's continue. See who wins the Stanley Cup this season. Looks like the Rockford Ice Hogs are on to round 2, which is a good sign. Hopefully they could go far. Come on, Rockford. You guys got this. And looks like they must have... Yep, they got eliminated. That's unfortunate. But Laval's going to win the Calder Cup. And Columbus wins the Stanley Cup this year, which is kind of weird. But they do win the Stanley Cup this year. Let's take a look at those awards. Actually, the playoff tree first, for why not. So they beat the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup Finals in 6 games. Interesting. So there's that. Let's take a look at those awards. So Columbus wins the Stanley Cup. President's Trophy to the Tampa Bay Lightning for the 2nd straight season. The Edmonton Oilers and the Columbus Blue Jackets Cup Final. Kucherov wins the Art Ross, not a surprise. And the Hart. Cale Makar gets to James Norris. Kucherov to Lady Bing. Bach wins the Calder. Goudreau, I don't know how to say Goudreau at first. Goudreau is going to win the Conn Smythe for Columbus. Mackenzie Blackwood wins the Vezina as I was expecting. And the Jennings, him and Caden Primo. Mark Borieski is going to win the Masterton. Calgary's coach wins the Jack Adams. Crosby wins the Selke for the 2nd straight season. Interesting. Kucherov wins the Ted Lindsay. And Kucherov also wins the Maurice Richard. So Kucherov cleaned up on awards pretty much. AHL awards wise, Brent Sini is going to win an award for our team, which is interesting. Anybody else? Frank Nazar was the best rookie in the AHL. That's great to see. And that's the only awards that... Actually, Soderblom as well, the best goals against him in Mikkelsen. But was he the top goalie, though, in the AHL? No, Joey Decord was. Huh, that's an interesting one. Kind of surprised that Soderblom didn't win the best goalie in the AHL. I gotta take a look at how good Decord did quickly. He was in Henderson, I think, so we gotta take a look at the Henderson Silver Knights. Let me just see how good he did. Okay, yeah, he was really good with that save percentage, so that's probably what won him the top goalie. Didn't have as much shutouts and stuff like that, and not as good of a goals against, but yeah, that save percentage is pretty unreal for 55 games. Interesting. Okay, so there is that. Let's continue simulating up to the draft and hopefully win the draft lottery. Let's actually, yeah, we won't take a look at the draft class just yet, but let's see who ends up winning the draft lottery. Please let us win the lottery this year, and we fall 1-3. Why does this game hate when you have the first overall pick odds? We literally have one of the worst seasons in NHL history, and we fall from 1-3, and Vancouver moves up from 7-1. We could always try and trade for the first overall pick if it's worth it, but we have 3 this year, which means we might get that elite defensive defenseman, but we'll have to scout out the rest of the players to see if it's worth moving up, because we could definitely try and move up if we want to. Retirement-wise, just going to scroll through this a bit, not focus too much on it, because obviously we're not going to have really any retirements, I don't think. Wow, Zach Parise went back to New Jersey, huh, in his last season? That's actually kind of cool. To show you guys like the best players in each position. Phil Kessel retires. Yeah, not a lot of huge retirements. There's Letang on defense. Goalie wise, the best goalie to retire, Craig Anderson, finally retires at 44 years of age. God damn. Brian Elliott also retires the same year, which is funny because they were traded for each other at one point. So there you go on retirements. We will do some draft class interviews as well, because like I said, we want to find out more about that top 5 to see if it's worth moving up at all. We did not lose any coaches. That's good. Let's go to draft interviews, which I don't really do that often. Okay, so Vance is a guaranteed high elite. That's interesting. Oh, it might be worth trying to move up if we can, because Vancouver, I don't know if they would be willing to move this pick, but we could definitely try. And then Christensen jumped up to number 2 apparently, which means Misa's there. Tikhonov, who's a sniper, is up there, so we could go with somebody like Tikhonov. He is a little bit lower overall wise, but he is a sniper. That's interesting. And then there's also Francois Waugh, which I don't know if he's a real player or not. He might not be a real player, to be honest. There's also Cox, who's a guaranteed medium elite as well. So we don't actually need to do draft class interviews for this part, but I'll do it for like the later parts of the draft just to see if we can find any steals. But I think it might be worth it to try and move up to get Vance. Is a high elite that has a 200-foot game. He's a guaranteed two-way forward probably. Then magic hands, good skating. I haven't seen a high elite in a while. I've seen franchise players obviously just guaranteed medium elites, but a high elite might be worth trying to trade up a couple spots. But let's see what else we could find here. See if there's any low elites for later rounds that we could potentially scout out here. It's a 20-year-old goaltender, so I don't really care too much. Let's see if we could find somebody to do at least a draft interview with, because we haven't done one of these in a while. Actually, maybe I won't even do any draft interviews at this point. Any low elites? There's a couple gems here. Maybe we'll interview the gems. 5 years out. Never mind on that front. Yeah, those goalies don't look that good. They're 5-year ETAs and they're gems. How about these low elite potential guys? Those guys look actually decent. You know, I'm not going to do any draft interviews. It's kind of pointless since we know actually the top 5. Okay, so let's take a look at that draft class again just quickly. So, yeah, Vance is definitely the unanimous number 1. Then at 2, I don't know who's going to necessarily go. It could be Christensen. There's also Misa, who could go number 2. We could potentially go with Tikhonov if we want that sniper. I'm definitely going to pin him because he might be one of the options we want to go with. But if we want to try and move up to get Asher Vance, I could totally understand doing that as well. So, yeah, let's go to progress reports. See what we got in here. Probably a lot of statistical drop off, my guess. Oh, actually, never mind. Some statistical growth has dropped off, but Byfield apparently is back to an 88, which is good. Korchinski got a lot of natural growth as well. Looks like we're going back to almost like good in terms of chemistry and stuff like that, so that's actually good news. In the system wise, what do we got for top prospects? Anybody getting a lot of growth? Brunstrom's up to a 76. Edvinson's still a 78, but I think I will play him this upcoming season so he gets a little bit more growth. Kagorodov's getting some growth, which is good for low elite. Olesen, not really much growth, but he still should be probably an NHL player next season. Azar is ready for the NHL almost. Same with, well, not with Tulipov. But Tulipov got a lot of growth, which is good. So we are getting a good amount of growth from prospects in the system as expected with how good this AHL team actually was this season. Mikkelsen even jumped up to a 67 as a backup, which is interesting. No growth from Soderblom because he's already as high as he's going to get. And then Comesso jumped up to an 82, which is good to see. So there you go on that front. And final thing, the contract situation. Who is up for renewal this offseason? Kubalik. A lot of these UFAs I probably will end up letting go of and then trying to find new people that to bring in more money, but we could sign some of these guys back up. A lot of them might not want extensions after last season, but Zari is up for renewal. He's the biggest RFA, I'd say, which he doesn't look like he's going to develop much, but we could still sign him up for a couple years. But like I said, a lot of these UFAs we could let go of. Olsen needs a contract. Yeah, so there's still a couple RFAs that are going to definitely need to be re-signed, but we will have to let go of some of these guys probably to make room for some of the younger guys to be drafted. Like, for example, Tulipov should probably be in the AHL next season. And goalie-wise, Comesso needs a new contract, which he looks like he's going to be a legit starting goalie. So we could sign him up for quite a few years if we want to. Driedger probably is gone, I'd say, unless we want him and Comesso to split time. And then Soderblom honestly could be an NHL backup next season if we really wanted to as well. So there you go on that front. And also one last thing I wanted to quickly check. Pending free agents. Who are the big pending free agents for this upcoming year if they don't get contracts? Rantanen's the big one. Let me actually sort this by UFA only. Rantanen's the big one. Jacob Chikrin's a pending free agent as well. Yeah, there's some good players this offseason in terms of free agents. It looks like if they don't get contract extensions, but they might end up getting some contract extensions, like PLD even. So there's definitely some pieces that we might be able to add to this roster to make them a lot better, and also we might be able to find ourselves a cap whale if we want to. But there is some options out there. We could even bring in somebody like Carl Vejmelka if we really wanted to. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of our Chicago Blackhawks franchise mode. So in next episode, we will have the draft and re-sign stages. We look to hopefully have a better season in next year. We could also sign ourselves a new head coach this offseason that is actually really good. And hopefully this team could turn a page from the horrible season and at least do a little bit better next season. Like at least have like 30 to 40 wins next season by comparison to the 9 that we had this year. So let me know what you guys think down below. And I'll see you guys next time.